Mick was just a 16-year-old living in a small Australian village where every morning started with the same activities: breakfast, a walk around the house, some time with friends, but he soon realized that he was missing something important. He felt alienated among his peers, not finding common ground with them. Instead of spending time with his friends, he was drawn to a completely different atmosphere. He felt like he belonged with older and wiser people. Mick wasn't like the other kids, his interests were much more serious, and in his thinking he was often much more mature than many adults. One day, while walking past a large house on the outskirts of the village, Mick noticed a woman working in the garden. She was many years older than he was. Her soft movements and calmness immediately caught his attention. This woman's name was Sally, and although she looked quite normal for her age, there was something in her eyes that left Mick lost in speculation. Sally was in her early 40s, but her inner world, despite her outward maturity, remained complex and probably a little disillusioned. She lived alone in a large house, was often alone, and somehow didn't question to herself why her life had turned out the way it had. Initially, their meeting had not been special or out of the ordinary. Sally had simply hired Mick to mow the lawn to save money on the gardener's services. She was busy with household chores and needed a helper. Mick in turn needed the work, and gladly accepted. There was nothing unusual about this simple task, but somehow it happened that this particular job became a life-changing moment for him. Each day he came more and more often, and each time they talked more and more. At first the conversations were about the usual things: the weather, events in the village, but soon they became deeper. Sally began to open up to Mick, talking about her worries, her disappointments in life and her losses. She made no secret of the fact that her life had not turned out the way she had once dreamed it would. Her husband was long gone, and Sally was alone, having lost hope for personal happiness. She wasn't much fun in her loneliness, but in her conversation with Mick it was as if she was finding something she had been missing. There was something sincere, real about this young man. She told him that it had been so long since she had felt the attention of other people, that her heart had become empty and a little stiff. Mick, for his part, felt quite differently. He was an impressionable young man whose feelings were strong and inexperienced. He couldn't explain what it was about Sally that attracted him, but something about her image was incredibly close and important to him. He saw her not just as a woman, but as something more of an enigma that he wanted to solve. These conversations about life, about her inner world, about her experiences became more and more intimate each time. They understood each other, and soon there was a strong emotional bond between them. At first Mick didn't realize that this attachment was growing into something stronger. He thought he was just spending time with a woman he was interested in, but he soon realized that he had become much more important to her than she had realized. Their relationship was becoming more and more complicated. He began to long for her, seeing her more often, and each time there was more intimacy between them. They were starting to spend time not just talking, but in more personal, intimate situations. This was new to Mick. He was fascinated by her looks, her intelligence, and the way she could listen and understand him despite her age. Sally in turn was beginning to feel caught between two worlds. She was a woman of age, and despite her affection for Mick, she realized that her relationship with him was something that could not be sustained in the long term. But despite that realization, she couldn't give up on him. They were so close to each other that she couldn't just let him go. She felt that this relationship was helping her through her loneliness, but she also feared that such feelings might be seen as something vicious by society. The relationship between them became increasingly strained, and one day Sally decides that she needs to end this unhealthy, futile affair. She meets a man who could match her age and they begin to spend time together. Mick notices that she is drifting away from him, and this brings him great pain. He feels betrayed, abandoned, and begins to think that the love he feels for Sally will forever be a pipe dream, but everything changes when Mick discovers that her new companion is abusing her. Mick can't sit back and watch the man who replaced him in Sally's life hurt her. An inner sense of revenge, hurt and anger overwhelms him. He decides to act and gets Sally back by taking revenge on her abuser. He comes into conflict with the man and their meeting ends in violence. Mick does not think about the consequences of his actions. His heart is filled with rage and he is ready to fight for the woman who once became the most important person in his life. However, the consequences of this revenge are not long in coming. Mick is faced with the fact that his life will never be the same again. His relationship with Sally finds itself destroyed and he realizes that his attempt to win her back, though justified by his feelings, has failed to stop the rift between them. Sally realizes that her choices have led to this moment and she can no longer be the woman she once was. Their story ends tragically with pain, loss, and uncertainty for the future. This story is about how love, despite all obstacles, can lead to inevitable pain and loss. Mick and Sally are trapped in their own emotions and their lives will be forever changed.